Welcome to another exciting episode of Humanity 8.0, a podcast where we talk about movements and initiatives that seek to move humanity to its next epochal iteration. This podcast is brought to you by Witlingo. When it comes to managing a community, one of the keys to success is the ability to effectively communicate with the members of that community. If you are a service coordinator or responsible for community engagement, Witlingo provides a multi-channel, multilingual notification and engagement platform to help you work more efficiently and effectively. For more information, please visit www.witlingo.com. That's www.witlingo.com. And now, here's your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid.
Professor Scott Henkel, welcome to Humanity 8.0.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We always say we're living in interesting times, but I think we are right now at the moment, at least when it comes to democracy, in many, many ways. Not only in the way where there is Donald Trump, where people are saying he's threatening democracy, but I think what's happening right now is that, and this is my perspective, and I would love to hear your perspective, is that we are moving into a phase where representative democracy as we know it, what is supposed to work, is clearly now collapsing. The representatives are not representing at all. The main issues that people care about on a daily basis are not on the front burner. They are somewhere in the background, used at election time to divide. And so I think we are at a crisis where if we are going to move forward, we need to start thinking about, is there a better way? And in my opinion, direct democracy is a better way. And the reason why I think now is the moment is because I think a lot of stuff is coming together, technology-wise, education, all that makes that option an option. I think before that, it's sort of like pie in the sky, how are you going to have direct democracy and so on. But now I think we're getting there. Anyway, so I'm providing this context because my interest, I'm talking to a lot of people, talking to politicians, people who are running for Congress. Sorry about this noise. Okay, this is not my computer, that's why. Okay, people in Congress and all kinds of folks, and I want to also talk to academic people who have thought about this, who have written about this, who can help us conceptually, who can help us with historians, right? Who can tell us, hey, this is not new necessarily. Like, for example, the book that you wrote and that had the chance and the pleasure of reading, was really something. First of all, I was ashamed that I didn't know a lot of the stuff that you covered. You know what I mean? I mean, this is very important stuff that happened, and it explains a lot of stuff today. But I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to give the mic to you. Tell me, you are director of the Wyoming Institute for Humanities Research. What is that? And what is your role there?
Yeah, great. Again, thank you for having me. Indeed, I'm the director of the Wyoming Institute for Humanities Research at the University of Wyoming. We help faculty, students, and the public to produce their work. One of the really great joys of the job is me getting to work with faculty researchers all across the university and all across the state to produce articles, books, essays, journalism, podcasts. I view my work as director of the Humanities Research Institute. It's a helping job. If I can work with people to get their work out into the world in the way they wish it to be out in the world, that's a win for me. So, the most wonderful parts of the job are talking with bright people about their ideas, helping them to clarify them and helping them to get them down on paper and then get them down out into the world. It's really quite lovely experience. One of the projects that the Humanities Institute runs is called the Democracy Laboratory. So relevant to our conversation, that specific program, that is a year-long cohort-based program. We accept 6 to 8 people per year and they go through a curriculum where they learn community-based research methods. They learn methods of collaborative communication. They work on both collaborative and individual projects related to the quality of democracy. And the year-long program ends with a public symposium. The participants in the program present their work. We hold it at our local public library, the Albany County Public Library. And then after they present their work publicly, they publish that work in our journal called Experiments in Democracy. And I'm so happy to be talking with you now at this very moment, because just yesterday, we received from the Library of Congress the ISSN number for the journal. So it has been like, there was a soft launch. It's out there in the world, like if you search for it. But now that it is all up and recognized, in the very next few days, we're going to be doing a big launch around it. So please do check it out.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. Fantastic news.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for that. It was very enticing. I need to find out more about, your institute and so forth, and then the work you guys are doing. So I'm looking forward to the release, and I'll definitely be reading.
Thank you.
So you're also associate professor in the departments of English, African American Studies, and Diaspora Studies, right? At the University of Wyoming. Okay.
Correct.
Now, I think I know what it means to be professor of English and African American Studies, but tell me about the, I think I know, probably I don't, but how about Diaspora Studies? What Diaspora, what does one do there? What kind of material, what kind of output do you guys produce as you do your studies?
Yeah. The word diaspora in the title, African American and Diaspora Studies, diaspora is the movement of people across space and time. So to refer specifically to the African diaspora is, of course, to refer to the slave trade and its legacies for today. I was not at the University of Wyoming when that name was decided, but I am glad that the generation before me decided upon that name, because it makes an opportunity for those of us who study and teach in that field to go beyond the United States borders. I mean, to understand the history and legacies of enslavement. It's difficult to come to a full grasp of those histories and that legacy if one doesn't understand enslavement as part of a broader world system. So, yeah, diaspora is the movement of people across space and time.
Okay. And so you mentioned so it's tied to the African American Studies and the surrounding, obviously the story of the diaspora. It is really a story of diaspora in addition to slavery. Do you do anything beyond the African American Studies as far as diaspora, or do you contain within the African American Studies? Like, do you do?
Yeah, others, but that's my focus.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so as I was saying, your book is what I was doing research on direct democracy. I've been doing this for 2 years now, and as I was saying before the call, is I am one of those who I'm always looking on how to convert learning, convert information into action, right? How do we do? Okay, not that we know, what do we do with what we know? Academia gives you the opportunity to understand and figure things out and create perhaps a strategy, because now you are a lot more informed, but then there is the action. So within that context, right now we're moving into the second phase of the action, and I would love to include you, at least keep you up to date about how we're taking all these learnings and turning them to an actual strategy that is doable and so on and so forth, given the lessons, right? I know that if I started acting without reading your book, without reading a lot of other stuff and engaging with other people, I can see myself me and my team making a lot of basic mistakes, right? Bad assumptions, doing things that don't work or won't work, right? So your book was instrumental in informing me quite a bit that number one, what we're trying to do is not new as such, at least conceptually, right? That actually a whole nation, Haiti, right, was which is, I think, an exceptional nation, to be honest with you, in terms of, of what they did. Tell us about the book itself. It is more of a literary criticism book, wouldn't you say, literature? So coming from English,
Right.
but I'm really interested because I love interdisciplinary work. This is work that is pulling from all kinds of sources and putting them together into something, and I love that. Right? You're not narrow into a box and okay, you're a historian. This is what you do. You're English. You put something really important, I think, in that book, and I love the fact that it's from the English department, right? Anyway, so tell us like the core thesis of the book, and if you were to say, here's your takeaway. If you read the book, you should take away X, Y, and Z. What would those be, if you could?
First of all, thank you for seeing both theory and practice in the book. I am an academic. I do value very much my identity as a thinker and a researcher. But also in past lives, I have been a union organizer. I have been someone who has directed political campaigns and volunteered for many more. So I would like to think that a perceptive reader, such as you, and thank you for that, can see both ideas and action in my work. I really like the idea from the political scientist Corey Robin, who says that something, I forget his phrase exactly, but ideas and theories create constituencies. They work in the world in certain ways. I also am a fan, and I would not critique basic research that is about ideas purely, that then goes out into the world and other people pick up those ideas and do with them what they will, right? I'm not one of those who makes an argument against basic research because I think it's really important.
Yep.
But for me personally, I mean, my way of walking through the world, praxis, brothers and sisters, praxis. you gotta think and do, again, that's not to critique how anyone else approaches their life, their work, and their thinking. But I would love, my hope, my intent is that when I write, not only do the ideas motivate, but there's something useful in there. And on the topic of interdisciplinarity, which you mentioned, I guess I'm just a borrower. When I see a good idea somewhere, I'm not going to say, oh, that person had that idea, or like that discipline over there had that idea, and it's not useful to me. Yeah, I am a literary studies scholar primarily. That's my home. Works of literature broadly defined, and I want to say small L literature, not like, the great canon, right? That is not my approach.
No, I love that. I love that. Fantastic.
Yeah, but the written word, I'll get to the last part of your question about the thesis of the book in a second, but it's something that I believe deeply. Ideas have power and words have music. And the people who can put them together effectively, oh my gosh, what can't that combination do?
True. Yeah.
It's the thing that keeps me anchored in literary studies. Anyway, after all the prolegomena, now you ask about the
well, that was very useful. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. Go on.
Oh, good. Thank you. It's funny. I was thinking about what I might want to say about the book. It's been a few years now since it's been published.
It's good. You have a distance.
Yeah, not too long. 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. But the funny thing about writing a book, like writing for me is not just like transcribing what I think. Writing is thinking for me, right? And for many others, of course. Writing is thinking. But even now, after I'm done writing that book and it is out in the world, I continue to think about those ideas and how, if I had a do-over, if I had a mulligan, how I might say them a little bit better. And I think I can probably boil down the 200 and some pages of the book to something along the lines of this. People have power. You have power. And when you cooperate with others, you can multiply that power. That's probably the thesis of the book. And yeah, if I had a do-over, I would probably write that in the introduction and just be able to say that. But you know, the book is a long effort to show the power that people possess, and not just the power to overpower others, but the intrinsic power of intellect, capacity that all human beings have, not in the same way, not in the same amounts. Like, I'm not trying to make a homogenizing argument about what all human beings can do, right? But the power that we possess, when combined with other people, has the opportunity to do some pretty marvelous things in the world. You mentioned Haiti, but the other examples, and the Haitian Revolution, but the other examples in the book are perhaps not as world-shaking as that, but important. Labor union activists in the 8-hour workday, for example.
Yeah.
And the examples, what I write in the book is the examples that I show are special and sometimes spectacular in the strict sense of that word. But the thing that I'm talking about, the thing that I'm most interested in, people's capacity, people's power, and the opportunity to combine that power with others, that collective power is the thing that I call direct democracy. Now, one last thing, and I've been talking for a minute now, but one last thing. That's the thing that I refer to as direct democracy. What most people call direct democracy is sort of like democratic engagement without the barrier of representation, which I'm not saying that's not a good definition. I just, what I needed in the book was a concept. I needed a technical term in order to describe the thing that I was going to examine over the course of the book. And I think the best phrase for that, the best term for that concept is direct democracy. When I write about direct democracy, I think about it as a type of collective power, not necessarily a form of governance, although I am also interested in that form of governance.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. No, I did catch that.
Let me go on for a bit.
No. This is me talking as little as possible, and you talking as long as possible. That's how it should be. All right. So, yeah, no, I definitely did catch that distinction. You make that throughout the book, that you're talking about power, right, as opposed to a way of, of doing politics, right? Now, what attracted me is the fact that when I go and talk to people and say, and tell them, hey, there has to be a way for us to have a bigger say in our policies, a bigger say into the bills that get introduced in Congress, a much bigger say than we can harvest, now that you have given me this concept, our power, and exert our power, upon the representative, right? And actually, very interestingly, is at a very micro level, and usually the micro explains the macro. The very micro level, the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been trying to get our representative, who is a 5-time incumbent congressman, to show up for a debate. Okay. He said early on in September, I'm not doing any more debates. This is a very secure blue congressional district, and that's fine. But if you, a Democrat, are going to describe yourself as, the protector of democracy, which is what this election is apparently all about, we Democrats are protecting democracy against this hooligan or this whatever fascist, right? If you are going to use that language, then at the very least, show up to these debates so you can show that you are serious about democracy. And democracy is about you, at least in my opinion, it's about you taking the opinion of the people seriously. If 57% or 80% of people believe that you should vote yay and you vote nay, you're not being respectful of democracy. Now, this is a bad thing or a good thing, depending obviously on where one stands. Like Plato would say, oh, no, it's good. He's doing that because he knows better than these people, right? But if you're like somebody like me, I think I'd rather have the people, even if they are wrong once in a while, be in charge, right? Than wrong, right? I don't know what that means, right? Versus somebody who has a lot of agency and decides on their own. And then, in fact, when they buck public opinion, they're applauded for their courage, their so-called political courage, when in fact what they're doing really is being anti-democratic. So anyway, so the micro lesson was, after 3 weeks of pushing, we did a stunt, and we had a debate between the two candidates and a bot that represents this guy, right? And it was aired yesterday. It was covered this morning, and lo and behold, the guy has decided. Lo and behold, the representative has decided to start showing up to the next debate, just like that, right? So this is an example of these 4, 5, 6 people, us, exerting pressure, right? Power, exerting our power, right? And that power was felt. He felt the discomfort, right? And therefore he acted, right? And so I just want to appreciate that concept, that sort of clearing, making it clear in people's head that power is actual action that you can exert because you have it. And if you don't exert it, it's as if you didn't have it, right? So I wanted to just dovetail your remarks with that.
Yeah, thank you. I watched, it was pretty late here in the Rocky Mountains, so I didn't stay up to watch the whole thing. But when it appeared on your YouTube channel, yeah, I did watch the first, I watched through the first 2, 3 questions.
Yeah, that's enough. It was all about just getting that concept out that there is, and also the thing about shaming him. I think we did exactly that. We shamed him into showing up. Show up.
Yeah.
You're not. This is not beneath you. Asking for a vote.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment. I agree with your assessment of how that power worked in that situation, and I think it's pretty impressive. I think that oftentimes people feel apathetic or disengaged because they try to do a thing and it doesn't have any effect at all. And probably when any of us engage in any process, 1 time out of 10, we get our way. And that's, part of the way the world works, I think. Yeah. But on that 10th time, when a person acts and sees their actions have an effect, I think that is like yep. That's the little birth of something. That is the little idea of, oh, many times in my life I feel powerless, but every once in a while things work out and I can have an effect. And that maybe I shouldn't talk from the general. I should talk from the specific. In the rare times in my own life and in my own work where that has happened, it gives me strength. It buoys me for the other 9 times when my wishes actually don't come to be fulfilled. But can I add one quick more thing on that? Mm-hmm. What I would always want to say in these situations is that questions of power, at least as I understand them, also ought to be questions of ethics. Like, because one can do a thing doesn't automatically mean that one should do a thing, of course, right? That seems to me to be basic and elementary. But when we're talking about power and people's ability to exercise their power and to have an effect on other people, if that, I won't go on for too long, but I'll just say, if that realization that power can have effects isn't at some point quickly coupled with an understanding of the ethics of how that power ought to be used, then that can lead to some pretty troubling territory, which I probably need to explain.
I understand. I totally understand. Well, 2 things. Let me just start with the last point you made. I am a big believer in let's call it the regular person, the working class. Okay, I'm a big believer in the working class. The working class are people who are working and taking care of their families, and they're focused on the right values. They are not consumed by a desire for power. They don't have these grand plans in their heads and so on, right? So if you don't have a master rhetorician, somebody, a sophist, if we use Plato's word, right? Somebody who knows how to manipulate emotion, and it can be on either side given any day. If you don't have that person in the mix, I trust these people to do the right thing. As soon as such a person gets in there, they will manipulate even the most decent person. They'll put them in some kind of a frenzy. And so for me, direct democracy's advantage is removing these folks. I would love to have a political landscape where nobody is very, very articulate or charismatic, right? I don't want charisma. Charisma is dangerous. Charisma and brand, fame, all those dull criticism, right? But if everybody is just looking at it functionally, okay, right and wrong, good and bad, right? It's not right to discriminate against that. Most vast majority of people who are working class, black, white, whatever, in the South and the North, they're decent. They are decent, right? They get frenzied and so on because you have this political class that's doing its thing, this disgusting class that does all these things in the name of what? Of their anger and desirement. Many of these congressmen are just immoral, So removing that layer for me is key, and I'm coupled with the belief that the working person, by definition, they're almost by definition, I would say, is that's sort of my sort of optimistic, naive, perhaps, take on what you just said.
I share that if that is optimistic and if that is naive, I share that optimistic naivete. I am a university professor now, so if you look at my W-2, you would probably not think working class. But neither of my parents had a college degree. My mom was a school bus driver, and my dad was a factory worker, and they worked their lives in the hopes that mine would be better. That is also perhaps traditional and naive and cliche. And I know, of course, I walk through the world in a different way than other people who don't look like me. I know all that. Believe me, I've thought about all of that a lot.
Yeah.
And also, my working class parents wanted something for me, and they shaped me and they put me on my trajectory, especially my mom, who wanted me to be doing basically what I'm doing right now, which is, a little prophetic in a way, but I am
fantastic,
eternally grateful for her for doing what she did for me. And yeah, it does shape my views exactly along the lines of what you said. You and I, it seems, just hearing you talk for a moment ago, you and I see eye to eye on the critique of demagoguery, that the people who are often manipulated, and I will often count, I have been wrong.
Same here.
Here in the restaurant, it's 9:36, and I've probably been wrong 4 times since I got out of bed this morning.
Oh yeah. I look at myself at last week, and I'm like, I'm still making mistakes, but yes, we make mistakes every single day. As long as we learn,
as long as we learn, So my deepest critique is not of any particular person who holds any particular view. Of course, those can be critiqued, and they ought to be. The working class is not like inherently better than any other class, like morally, but they have experiences. We have experiences that perhaps other classes don't. And again, we see eye to eye. The people who would use their voices amplified in many ways in this technological era in which we live, who use their very prodigious voices in order to manipulate people, and to cheat them and to beguile them. I have far more empathy for the cheated and the beguiled than I have for the cheaters and the beguiled.
Yeah, exactly. And so let me get back to the first point, which you made, which I think is a very important one, which is, no matter how little the success is, that success can spark hope, in others, right? In oneself, oh, finally, I closed the sales deal, for example. Salespeople are like that, right? They're desperate until they close, and all of a sudden they're re-energized, right? Same thing with all of us, right? Oh no, I'm submitting this paper, nothing. Oh, finally you get, and then all of a sudden everything looks like doable, right? And so that's why, for example, and I'll share with you, over the next couple of weeks, some things we're doing because we're moving into action mode. And in a nutshell, what we're trying to do, well, we've established something called the True Representation Movement. And what we're trying to do is to have in 2024 in every congressional district in Virginia. We're starting small because it's all about success. Once we have some success, things will move faster. But initially, pulling our resources, congressional state, our state, Virginia, has 11 districts. So we want to run on each one. Each one will have somebody who is from the True Representation Movement, and that movement is this boils down to the following. And that's why technology comes into play. Imagine a representative who on every single vote of substance, not procedural, but of substance that comes in front of them, would vote exactly, as 51+% of the population wants them to vote, right? With zero agency as far as what they can do, right? So that's our belief. There's a whole manifesto we wrote about why we believe this is not only desirable but doable given where we are in terms of technology. And so we're going to be pushing this idea. And to your point, we'll start very small, right? In 2025 in Virginia, we are going to look at state delegates, right? Just state delegates. We want to have, because in Virginia, the state Senate actually is 49-51, Democrats, Republicans, right? You score 2 seats there as an independent, all of a sudden, people will say it is possible to have independence make a difference, right? And so I'm giving this example to build on the notion that it's so crucial to motivate people, to show them that you're able to do this. You're not spinning wheels, you're not fantasy land. You actually force the guy to show up for a debate. That's we're gonna amplify this big time. We got 2 seats in the Senate. Okay, join. And I don't understand why a lot of these groups out there, they don't understand this basic thing, which is highlight the success, no matter how small, because that will bring energy to everybody. Plus, folks who might be watching and say, I'm going to join these guys. They're going somewhere. Why not? Right. Anyway, so no, so there's a concept there that I want to in the book. And in fact, the way I got to your book is through the concept, the swarm. I was looking for who was writing about the swarm. And then I got into your book and then I read and I found out a lot of other things other than the swarm. But the metaphor of the swarm, tell us about how it's used in many different ways. Maybe you can just touch on a few ways it was used within the context of your writing for that book.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I also, if there's time, I don't know,
Sure.
if there's time, I'd also like to talk about your true representation movement that you talked about there just a moment ago.
Absolutely.
I did a little bit before this about it and have a thought or two about it, but really I would like to learn from you. So would you like to talk about that first, or would you like me to talk about the swarm when we come back to it?
I want to talk about the swarm because you know what? Our conversation about, I'm hoping to invite you to be a member of the advisory board, where we can have a relationship and then you can follow, because I know that you will be able to help us understand things and clarify things and not get confused about certain things. So I would love to invite you to that. In fact, I am inviting you here officially, and then you can tell me after.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Time for that. But let's talk about the swarm, and then let's, my favorite topic obviously is my thing, but I don't want to be consumed by it here. I just want to talk about you and your book, which is a very important piece of work. But let's go to the swarm concept first.
Yeah. Okay, great. No problem. Of course. Just know that I find the work that you're doing also very interesting, and I'll look forward to a future conversation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. The metaphor of the swarm is where the project was born. This project began as my dissertation. Please don't read it. It's juvenile and elementary compared to whatever, but like many projects that begin in a particular place and then over, a good number of years, it took me 11 or so years to turn dissertation into book.
But I'll tell you what, there's probably some freshness into it where it was so innocent and so on. Because I do once in a while go back to these dissertations and I feel like I see the germ. Oh, I love this kid, right? But go on. No,
I shouldn't have mentioned it. I talk about my dissertation is related to my book, like dinosaurs are related to birds, like deep in their DNA. You can
we'll see a germ somewhere in there, right? We'll see the kernel, right? Yeah.
But yeah, the project was born. I noticed that many writers throughout the 19th and early 20th century referred to political movements as swarms. So what I thought I was going to find, I just collected lots of examples of writers using this metaphor.
Yeah.
And what I thought I was going to find is that most writers used that metaphor as an insult, to demean, to dehumanize. And of course, there are many examples of that.
Yep.
Thomas Carlyle is the big example of using the swarm metaphor as insults in my book. And that's what I thought I was going to find predominantly. But it turned out to be a much more mixed bag. Sometimes people used the metaphor of the swarm just to explain something that they didn't understand, right?
Yeah.
And other times people use the metaphor of the swarm in some pretty complimentary might not be the right way, but in more validating terms than, again, I expected. And it pops up in some really quite amazing places. The biggest example that I use in the book is C.L.R. James's book, The Black Jacobins, about Toussaint Louverture and the Haitian Revolution, which, if there's anyone out there looking to add to their to be read pile, I encourage. I mean, it's such a beautiful, wonderful book. But James uses the metaphor of the swarm 5 times over the course of the Black Jacobins. And what totally blew my mind is that he uses it consistently to describe collective actions. And he uses the metaphor in some really thunderous places in the plot of his book. When he talks about the near to final, I mean, it's complicated, but the near to final moment when French imperialism ended in the nation, in the colony that was then Saint-Domingue and led to independence, he uses the swarm metaphor at that moment. Ultimately, all of those examples sort of accumulated into one of the big arguments of the book, which is when you see the swarm metaphor used to describe political movements like these, it could be an insult, it could be neutral, it can be complimentary, but the thing that it shows, the thing that these writers, even though they use different words to describe it, the thing that these writers are trying to explain is a form of collective power. And as I said at the top of our conversation, that's the collective power that I call direct democracy.
Yeah.
The power of human capacity multiplied by cooperation.
Yeah. It sort of reminds me, although it's very paradoxical, it would remind me of that of the Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, right?
Oh, sure.
You have all these people deciding to give authority to, this entity, right? In this case, it is sort of reclaiming that authority or acting, a swarm it feels like it's like the Leviathan, but for the people in a way, like it's a thing that has its own agency and so forth, right? That's how I sort of understood when we were describing in the book.
That's exactly right. The famous cover, you're speaking of the famous cover image of Hobbes' Leviathan, where
all these people are there.
where the face of the sovereign is made up of 1,000 smaller faces, and it gives the indication that the sovereign is made up of the collective power of all of those people.
Right.
Yeah. Collective power, again, back to the question of ethics. Collective power can be emancipatory, it can be liberatory. And when I use the phrase direct democracy, that's the context in which I mean it, like people acting on their own behalf, in their own interests, in ways of their own choosing, right? But the metaphor in the cover to Hobbes's Leviathan is that collective power can also be exercised from above. Now, I would argue against that concept in all sorts of ways, and we can get into it as you want. But anyway, to know that there is a theory of collective power from below and a theory of collective power from above, and both of them get mobilized in, I feel, some pretty fascinating ways.
Yeah. I mean, for the Leviathan, I think it's the seeding or it's the giving of agency. Say you have agency, you speak on our behalf, and we don't macromanage you, so to speak, like to the sovereign. And then at which point, there's no hope for going back in a way, unless there is a civil war or whatever, right? Because the sovereign once they get that power is like it's like a bunch of people, like I don't know, 20 people, really. And what you can those are the people who are in being the sovereign, so to speak, as opposed to these millions who said yes, you are our sovereign.
You've been listening to Humanity 8.0 with your host, Dr. Ahmed Bouzid, founder and CEO of Witlingo.